I say here, let me just set you up so I don't let you down. Nothing I'm going to say here is rocket science. All of it is simple. All of it, in some way, you've heard before. Let me go through it. Attribute number one is something I believe very, very importantly, and I think it is absolutely obvious. A fundamental thing, attribute, however you want to put it, in success and in great leadership is the ability to be positive and the ability to be optimistic. It is fundamental. It turns out that two people with exactly the same capabilities, from the same backgrounds, with the same IQ, with the same education, one is positive and one is negative, they live in different universes. And ultimately, the results in life are completely and totally different. Positivity and optimism is the fuel for everything to an extent. Now, I need to put into context here what I mean by positivity. I don't mean that you run around with a smile on your face and that you're the gregarious party animal that everyone wants at their dinner parties. I think the kind of quality that builds greatness and builds good leadership is a positive disposition, a belief that you can get through, that you can make it. No matter how difficult times are, there's an opportunity. And I think that's particularly important today, where we're facing such challenge. The fact is, it's very difficult to build a business, I believe, and I said this yesterday, in very good times. It's hard to differentiate. It's times like today, when people are down and out, when people are battling, when markets are down, where you can spot differences, where you can really make a difference. And so the real thing is that positivity is about an innate belief that you can find a way through. But the question, of course, is why does it work so well? There are many books out there, and there are many people who believe you sort of evoke higher powers and all kinds of things when you are positive. But my sort of explanation is actually quite simple and a lot more, hopefully more rational. I believe when you're positive, you simply make better decisions. When you're positive, you're more rational and your decision making is better. And you would know that life is made up of a series of decisions. If you keep making the right decisions, you end up in a very, very different place to if you keep making the wrong decisions. And to a large extent, if I think of my life and my career, there have been a couple of major decisions that have made a real, real difference. Go the wrong way and your life is very, very different. But the issue is, think about this. The issue is that when you think about making decisions, you are always confronted as a leader or as a person with a series of scenarios. So you look out and you say, what am I going to decide upon? And the scenario A, scenario B, and scenario C. And it turns out, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, that people have the amazing ability to picture each of these scenarios. Humans have the ability to think through, what is scenario A and what does it mean? What is scenario B and what does it mean? And what is scenario C, etc. And they go through it. The problem with people is they're very bad at assigning probabilities. In other words, what is the chance that probability A is relevant and will work? What is the chance that probability B, A is relevant, that will work, etc.? So people are remarkably good at laying out scenarios and picturing them, but they're bad at assigning probabilities. And a great example, I think, certainly from our world, is sort of causes of death and the danger that people face. And there's an amazing phenomenon in South Africa of crime. Now, let me say up front, I think virtually everyone here has been a victim of crime. I have, my family has. I'm not saying for one moment that crime is not something to be serious about. But the fact is, the reaction to it is unbelievably irrational. So when people make decisions about lifestyle, where they should live, what they should do, it's incredible how emotive crime is and what it makes them do. It makes them leave the country, move suburbs, move away from their family, drive different cars. They do the most unbelievable thing. Yet I'll tell you this, people have an amazing ability to think about these things, but they don't really understand the probability. So we know, for example, from an actuarial standpoint, that say for people age 40, men age 40, we expect 8.5 deaths per 1,000 lives. That's sort of the actuarial statistic. The question, of course, is what causes those deaths? Now, I think people have the great ability, as I said, to picture those things. A motor vehicle accident, pretty clear. HIV, AIDS, people, they certainly can picture how you get it, and they think about it all the time, but that's a different presentation. HIV, AIDS, cancer, they can think of smoking, eating too much, living an unhealthy lifestyle, and certainly crime. So they can picture the scenarios. But when you actually go through the causes of death and you actually look at the statistics, you'll find that the numbers are very, very counterintuitive. If you look at the 8.5 deaths per 1,000 lives, you find that nearly half of them are caused by HIV/AIDS. You see that 2 to 3 are caused by heart attacks, a huge amount by cancer, a lot by motor vehicle accidents, MVAs. And if you in fact go down to death by crime, in our statistics, it's tiny, it's hard to put on the graph. In fact, our numbers show that I think there's a 110 times greater chance of dying from the other causes than dying from crime. Yet in our business, you know how hard we have to work to get people to change their behavior. Eat less. Watch your weight. Don't smoke. Look at physical activity. It's incredibly difficult for people to do that. Yet the statistics they face are horrific. Yet you mention crime and they leave the country. Right? And that's really the point I'm trying to make. You see, when you are negative, what you tend to do is you look at the scenarios ahead of you and you focus on the one that you're scared of and you run from it. When you're positive, I think the world is very different. When you're positive, you see the scenarios and you choose the one that you want and you work the probabilities. And so they're very, very different worlds. And therefore, my hypothesis here is that positive people tend to make better decisions. They understand the probabilities, they understand the scenarios differently and make the choices quite different. A fundamental attribute of great leadership and success is the ability to dream and the ability to set goals. Now, I guess that's an obvious thing to say, but I don't know how many people you know that really dream. I know kids do, but very few adults have the ability to dream. Somehow we've lost that ability. I know that many people set a lot of plans, and I know many businesses tend to have business plans, 18 months, 2 years, 3 years. That's not a dream. That's bureaucracy, man. That's milestones. You've got to do that stuff. The real ability to dream, to think about what is it that you really want in life. This is not about money necessarily. What is it that you're here to achieve? What do you want to end with? What legacy do you want to leave? That discipline, people tend to not do. And it's that fundamental issue that I think separates often mediocrity from real greatness. If I think about our story, and I raise our story because it's a context I can talk from. Please excuse, I hope I'm not sounding patronizing that it's a definitive story. It's the one I know. But if I think about the discovery story, the whole idea of discovery was built on a dream. You know, we built an incredibly rigorous company. It's a company an organization that is multifaceted. We have a team of incredibly smart people that are rigorous and complex. But I think, if I think about what drives us, there's a dreamlike quality. There's nothing actuarial or clinical or whatever. It's a feeling of doing something that's very special that makes a difference. And I'll tell you what I always like to show is the first day that I started in 1992, I'm a very meticulous keeper of sort of lists of things to do. This is the first list. I have it on my study at home. It's the first list of what I had to do that day. And amazingly, if I look at, I think it's point number 6, you can't read my handwriting, but at point number 6, it actually says product development commence with ideas. Now, just think about how ridiculously stupid that is, right? Who starts a business without any ideas, you know? Now, bear in mind, I'd raised the capital through RMB that became First Rand. These are hell of a smart people. They've been great partners with us and helped build the business. But like me, they're long-term players, believers in a dream, believers in building a business that's different. The detail will follow. You know, if you get the values right, you get the core purpose right, you get what you're trying to achieve right, the detail will follow. And I'm proud of the fact that Discovery never had a complicated business plan with capital and returns on capital and embedded value. We built the organization on this idea of something different, something that would make an impact in a very, very different way. And to this day, I know my best days in the office are when I'm in a dreamlike state. I don't mean unrealistic. I mean, think about what we're trying to achieve, what's special, what impact we're trying to make. My worst days are when I'm bitching and moaning about capital and what's the bottom line. That isn't what I don't think people aspire to that kind of thing. And then I get to the third attribute. Anyone who's heard me talk, I believe in this absolutely. One of the critical attributes of successful leadership is the ability to take action, to get things done. The ability somehow to innately know that time is limited. You have very, very little time. And somehow successful people know that, and unsuccessful people don't know it for some reason. And the question is, you know, I talk to our new staff at Discovery every month through our induction program. We have a process where all of our exco talks to our new people. And I ask them the same question. I've done this for 15 years. Is there greatness in you? And everyone I've spoken to says yes. Have you used up that greatness? No. Right? It's a constant theme. I've probably asked 10,000 people this question. It's the same theme throughout. And therefore, the obvious next question is, what are you waiting for? Now, we get into a debate and we go through it, and the only explanation I can have is the Freudian explanation, that people are sitting comfortably while time is burning with this unused potential. The only reason they can do that is because they believe they will live forever. It's a fundamental human belief that you're going to live forever, and at some point in time, you're going to liberate that kind of greatness in you. So it's important for me to tell you that you're not going to live forever, right? And as an actuary, I'm going to tell you now that you're very, very close to death right now, okay? And let me prove this to you. You know, if you ask people, I'm hoping getting this right, how much of your life have you lived? They do a very quick calculation in their mind. If they're 40 years old, they say, well, you know, I've lived 40 years. They add the years together. Let me just get that. They add the years together. They divide by how long they're going to live, and people typically say 80. It's interesting you see if they're pessimistic, it's 60. Optimistic, it's 100, but take 80. And they say, okay, 40 over 80 is 50%. I'm halfway through my life, you know. And that's not a bad conclusion, because it leaves you sort of feeling, well, I've got a long time left to make a difference, right? But of course the question is that correct? Do you think that's how time really works? You know, that's a calculation of how many times you go around the sun, you know. I mean, what relevance does that really have to you as an individual? How does your brain perceive time? That's the question. I would say to him, just hear me out on this. When you're going through life, time feels different as you get older. See, when you're a year old, 1 year is 100% of your life, right? When you're 2 years old, a year is 50% of your life. When you're 45 years old, like I am, a year is 1/45 of your life. As you get older, the years get shorter, right? Does anyone disagree with that? I've never met anyone who tells me the years are getting longer. Most people tell me, no, the things are getting shorter, the years are, I've been very busy, whatever it might be. They don't really realize the perception of time is based on how long you've been here. And so what you need to do when you think about this simple question, how much of your life have you lived, or how much have you got left, you need to work it out my way. My way looks very different. My way is to work on perceived time. So the first year, I count as 1. The second year, I count as a half. Are you all following me? The third year, I count as a third. So on until I get to 1/40, which is very depressing, right? And then I do the same thing at the bottom based on how long I'm likely to live. That's how long I've lived. And of course, the issue is, what does that give you? Well, I'll tell you what it gives you. It gives you 85%, right? So if you follow my reasoning that the years get shorter as you get older, I put it to you that you haven't lived half your life at 40. You've in fact lived a lot more than half your life. You've lived over 85% of your life. And what's really quite depressing is if you compare in a table, by the age of 10, in my scale, you live 60% of your life, right? Does that sound ridiculous? I don't think it is. Think about those long years at school, right? By the age of 40, you're 90% of your life. And why I have such fun telling the story is I don't really care how old you are in this room. You can see from our table, we're all in the final stages, right? That's what's fantastic about this, right? And so I'm making the point, whether you believe the mathematics or not, very strongly, that life and time is a very, very short thing. And there's some innate ability of some people to understand that sense of urgency. It's a fundamental attribute of success. Let me get to attribute number 4. There are 7 of them. I hope I'm tracking okay here, but there are 7 of them that I think are crucial. Attribute number 4 is something, again, not rocket science, and we know from our parents, success and successful leadership is about never, ever stopping to learn. It's one of the best bits of advice that I ever had was when I qualified. You know, often you come out of university, you sort of think you know everything. The person that I worked for made the comment to me that, you know, this is the start now. Put what you know very little. Now's your time to start learning. So we know with common sense, we know from parental advice that there's a quality in never ever stopping to learn, and it's an absolutely critical thing. And I come from a family, both sides of my in-laws and my parents, both believe very strongly in this idea of never ever stopping to learn. It's a critical thing. But it's interesting that I think it's Fortune magazine that every year asks a bunch of business and political leaders, what is the one bit of advice that you really value? And usually if you read it, most of it is really nonsense. But one guy said something that I found absolutely fascinating. He made the point that walking through India on a holiday, he came across an elephant with its trainer, right? And this massive, 2-ton elephant was tied to a fence by a thin piece of string. And he said to the trainer, why is it that this elephant doesn't just turn its head, break loose, and it's free? And the trainer said to him, you see, when we trained this elephant as a baby, right, we used chains to hold him down. And since he was a baby, he's never, ever tried to break loose again, right? And I think that is the tragedy of the human condition, that when we're born and we go through school and our parents tell us things, they give chains and they wrap us in all kinds of preconceived ideas. And thereafter, we never ever try to break loose again from them. So we see it at Discovery. I work with some really remarkable people, and often you find that people are limited by the most ridiculous things that happen to them at school. I was never good at maths. You know, that's a famous, my daughter once told me that I nearly had a heart attack immediately. You know, I'm not good at maths. You say that once, you're confined to a straitjacket for life. You never had leadership potential. And forever and a day when you promote people and say, well, I'm not sure I can lead. I never really had leadership potential. You know, this idea of never stopping to learn, part of it is learning about yourself more, you know, learning to break free of those shackles. It's a crucial ability to not be sort of caught in a world that you were told that's where you belong. It's a critical thing. But I want to tell you something about never stopping to learn. I in the previous attributes, spent a lot of time showing you how you're fighting the odds against time. Time is getting shorter. The ability to learn is the opposite. The beauty about knowledge, it's the only antidote to time running out. To sum up then, I've synthesized 7, I think, very simple attributes. I've tried my best to give you a sense of why I think they work. Positivity is the fuel of all kinds of success and successful leadership. It leads to the ability to dream. With those two, you've got to take action. Time is short. You don't have time. You need to deal with it. If you keep learning, you'll be in a completely different position. It's the only antidote to time running out. It lets you gain back the time that you lost. Your ability to work hard is critical. You can always work harder. You need to push. You will fail at times, but you need to keep pushing. You need to do it differently. You need to take innovation very, very seriously. And then fundamentally, whatever you do it with integrity and honesty. Ladies and gentlemen, that is my talk. I wish you the best of luck for the rest of the day. I hope you learn a huge amount, and I wish you great, great success. Thank you for listening.